In this video, we're going to be turning a regular blue barrel into a strawberry planter that will look like this. Okay, so how I get to this part so far, all I've done is I bought a barrel off a guy on Facebook Marketplace that had a food product in it. I got it home, looked at the label, smelled the stuff dripping out of it, and coincidentally, it was a strawberry flavoring, so it's safe for human consumption. I peeled the label off and threw it away. I then took my flexible tape measure. This happens to be a 100-foot tape. I think I got it at Harbor Freight long time ago. I wrapped it around the barrel and I took a dimension. I'm going to break this all down and just simplify it for you. So I took a dimension and then I went every it was 4 inches around that barrel then and marked it. And so pick the center of your barrel, wrap a cloth tape or a string marked at 4 5/8 inches. It should come out to like 16 trips around the barrel. I want my holes to be staggered, so there are 5 rows, and I wanted them staggered, like there's 3 in a line there and offset to 2 in a line. So it worked out very well to do it that way. And then the lines I measured from the top of the barrel. It's a little closer to the top than it is from that first row to the bottom. And I wanted that on purpose. You know, I want them as close up as possible, but they're spaced evenly at 6 inches between the rows. Let me pull a tape on this. So then this is a first row. This is a second row, first row, second row, first row. You know, again, we're staggering them. So from the top of that barrel, I started out at 4 inches and then I went every 6 inches after that. So it was really handy to have a stick that I marked out 4, 10, 16, 22, 28, and then 34 is the bottom of the barrel. So after I measured all the way around it and I put marks every 4 inches around the fattest part of the barrel in the center, then I held this stick to the top and I came over here and I put marks. So like mark number 1 is 3 slits. Then I went up to my next mark, and now you can see that mark number 2 is the 2 slits. So then I worked all the way around the barrel marking it. I then grabbed my battery operated circular saw. This saw has a blade of 5.5 inch diameter. It's a flat fence, I guess you call it, along the bottom. And I set it to a width. Now be careful, I don't have a battery in it. There's no power to this saw. I then set the depth of cut. You turn that little knob there and you can set this fence deeper or shallower. I set it to where there was, what was that number again? So if you're looking at the amount of exposed blade across there, the amount of exposed blade is about 4 3/4 inches. So then I made, very carefully, wearing the proper protective equipment, I made plunge cuts on every mark. And because the barrel is round and that fence is square, when I plunged it in till the fence stopped, I plunged the blade in till the fence stopped right there, even though I've got 4 3/4 inches of blade exposed, the amount of cut that it actually made in the barrel is a little bit smaller. And it's actually closer to, it's really closer to 4 inches is the amount of cut that it made. So the very next step is going to be cleaning up those cuts. I don't want this fuzzy stuff on here, so I'm going to take a hard tool, a screwdriver or a scraper of some kind, and I'm going to scrape all this fuzziness off of here. And then I'll show you what we do after we scrape all this fuzziness off. Okay, so the next step in the process, after I cleaned all the fuzz off, just because I don't want that fuzz, it looks poor, you know, even after you heat the thing up. So the next step, you can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually creating the pockets, and I'm using wine bottles to do it. I'm using this weed burner that's connected to a propane tank for like for a gas grill. The thing that I like about this burner compared to like a little propane torch or a heat gun is this puts out a lot of heat, but it doesn't put out a really acute flame. I mean, you can turn it up and make it roast that barrel, but you can turn this down to sort of a low flame and have a very large contact area, so you're heating a lot of the barrel at one time, where you cannot do that with one of these little ones. It'd take you forever. With this, it goes a lot quicker, and we got 40 holes to do, so this is a time-consuming process. So I'll get you up on a tripod here in a minute, and I'll show you sort of what the process looks like. I'm to the last hole on the top row here, so you can see that I've left bottles in. I want the bottles to stay in the pocket as they're cooling down. So the longer you can leave the bottles in the pocket, the better off you'll be. If you had 40 wine bottles, you know, enough to do every hole in this barrel, that would be the ideal situation. I don't. So I've got enough to do one row, and then I have to sort of pick and choose which holes I want to do then, because I want to leave bottles in the surrounding holes so that I don't distort them after, you know, like if I were to pull these two bottles out and heat this hole up, because the heat gets so spread out, it's going to distort these two pockets. So I want to leave these bottles in while I'm working close to them. So I'll probably end up working one side of this barrel and then sort of make my way around rather than doing, you know, a ring at a time. I just don't have enough wine bottles to do it. And as far as wine bottles go, there really is a difference. These are working okay. This is sort of your standard. You know, this is what most people think of when they talk about a wine bottle. Now, there are liquor bottles or, you know, wine bottles that have a gradual taper on the neck, rather than this is a real skinny neck. It comes down, makes a big shoulder, and then down to the body of the bottle. What would be better, and what they're harder to come by, is a bottle that has a gradual taper. It's almost like a straight line from, say, the neck here down to the shoulder, more of a straight line. And when you insert those bottles into those pockets, then it's a lot easier to form the pocket with. But this is what I've got, and they're working just fine. It would just be a little easier if I had that other style. I do want to take a second just to kind of promote Holt Camp Wineries. They are in southeastern Indiana. They're in a little town called New Alces. They're actually out of town. If you guys are in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, southeastern Indiana, northern Kentucky, check Holt Camp Wineries out. They are good people. They've got a beautiful setting back there. They got a little pond pond or lake, I guess you call it, right below the winery, so you can sit out, look across the lake. It's beautiful. It's quiet. They're way out of town. I mean, check them out. Holt Camp Wineries in New Alces, Indiana. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to get you guys up on a tripod, sort of show you the process here for heating and inserting the bottle, because it's not just, you know, you want to be sure that you don't burn the thing, so you got to heat it up slowly, and it will try to catch fire on you. Do not let it catch fire. I had one of them that actually was melting on me. I didn't even realize it. I was working over there on, I think, that pocket, and I didn't even realize this one over here had caught fire and it was melting. So it's still going to be usable, but it is going to be a blemish in there. So don't let the thing catch fire. I guess we should have talked about if you've got flammable liquids in your barrel. Like this barrel had flammable liquids. I think I mentioned it's strawberry, some sort of strawberry additive, which smells wonderful. But I did rinse this barrel out. So, you know, if you've had a flammable, an alcohol substance or some other flammable liquid in your barrel, before you go lighting a fire to it, make sure you rinse the thing out really good, that you don't blow yourself up, because you really could blow yourself up doing this. I'm going to get you on a tripod and show you what it looks like. So I can see it's changing color. I don't know if it's showing up on camera or not, but I can see it changing color. I'm gonna go ahead and just sort of remove the heat for a minute, shut this back off. If I wasn't working on the top row, if I had more bottles, I would go ahead and just heat another, like say heat this one down here and continue moving. But I want to let that heat sort of penetrate and heat soak right now, because we're just heating the very outside, and we want the heat from the outside to get into the inside. And this, I mean, these barrels are like, they're blue on the outside, but they've got a white liner on the inside, and really thick. And you need that heat to completely saturate that material before you can flex with these bottles. Don't let it burn. Like I said, it's going to try to flame up on you, but don't let it. See, this is where that other shape of wine bottle would be a lot easier to use. Because right now this lip is trying to fold in on me. I'm doing what I can not to let that happen. If I were to cut a larger slit, it would make it easier to do this, but I don't like the look of the larger slit. I'm gonna have to put a little more heat to that. There we go. Now, once you get it in there, make sure it sort of takes the shape that you want. Sort of pry your bottle up. That'll make it look a little nicer. Okay. Now, while that's cooling, I'm going to leave this one in place. And check this one. This one's pretty cool. So you can see where this is the one that got away from me. I didn't even realize that it was on the other side of the barrel, and it caught on fire, and it must have been burning for a little while before I caught it. So I think I'll pull out a couple of these that are cooled down already, and we'll work on the side of the barrel that's already sort of warm. So that's a pretty good looking pocket. This one's cooled down. Again, if I had more barrels, or excuse me, more bottles, it'd be a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and work in this area over here, since I've already got the wine bottles already in it. It's still hot, it still needs to cool down, so I might as well just continue this area. So then once we work our way back around to this side, I'll go ahead and put bottles back in these holes again, just to maintain their shape. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue to keep heating and stretching and pushing wine bottles in, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we cut the top off, and we need to drill some holes in the bottom too. be extra careful. I should have said that in the beginning. Just be extra careful. You're working with heat with these bottles, which is one thing. That's enough to sort of destabilize the glass and cause the bottle to crack or break. In either case, be very careful working with bottles doing this. I thought about making some sort of aluminum tube that would be similar to a bottle, but then I'd have to make a whole bunch of them. It would be sort of cost prohibitive, so just be careful. I'm going to let these last 4 or last however many cool down, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the top out. I'm going to use my jigsaw and just cut around this sort of outer edge, and I'll show you what that looks like. Just sort of melting that edge. You could take a tool and, file or something and knock that edge off there. You don't want it to be sharp enough where it scratch anybody up reaching in there. Okay, so that's it. That's pretty much it for the hard part. Now we got to drill some holes in the bottom just to allow for drainage. So that's pretty simple. I didn't say it before. I probably should have. Don't do this in your yard or your gravel or whatever, anywhere you're going to be working. When you start cutting up these blue barrels, you end up with slivers and chunks and pieces of blue. I've made the mistake before. When you do this stuff out in the driveway, it's always there. There's always little flecks of blue plastic in your driveway, or if you do it in your yard. So do it somewhere where you can sweep up all the mess after the fact. Don't do it in the gravel if you can help it. We're going to drill some 1/2-inch holes. 1/2 inch ought to be big enough to allow for drainage, but not so big that all the soil and stuff comes out. So we're just going to drill a bunch of holes. Whoops. All right, well, I'm going to try to get, knock all the pieces out of it, and then I'm going to take this thing out in the yard and take a scrub brush or an old broom or something, a hose, some soap water, and try to clean it up a little bit. Well, that's what it looks like all washed up out in the sun. Let's go ahead and get it filled up, get it planted. Well, there's what it looks like all filled up and planted. So this was sort of a collaboration with Mom and Dad here at the end. So I brought the barrel over a couple of days ago, and looks like they put in a piece of perforated PVC. Goes you probably can't see, but it looks like it goes almost to the bottom, and I'm guessing, I haven't talked to him about it yet, but I'm guessing that's for watering, to sort of evenly distribute the water all the way down through. Looks like Dad filled it up. I see some chunks of compost there. He's got some really good compost out behind the barn from old horse manure. So it looks like he probably put compost in there and then potting soil as well. So it looks really good, and I'm sure it's going to work just fine. He's got it set on a skid so that he can move it with his tractor. He has a set of pallet forks for his tractor. We talked about if they were going to put it on concrete, I would get him a barrel dolly. You can buy those at Harbor Freight for 40 or 50 bucks, I think. And then you could wheel it around real easily, on a concrete surface. But the skid will work out great to move this thing. And hope I helped you with this one, guys. If you're curious about building one of these things, I've seen them planted with tomatoes and peppers and pretty much anything you want to plant, you could plant in this thing. So I hope I helped you. If I did, click that thumbs up button. You want to see more videos like this, click the subscribe button. Till the next time, keep on tinkering.